My mother called me a Tuesday afternoon, which should have been my first warning. She never calls on Tuesdays. She texts. Little updates about my sister's life that I'm supposed to find delightful. A photo of my sister's new curtains, a screenshot of a restaurant reservation, a blurry picture of a handbag that apparently cost more than my monthly rent. But she called. And when I picked up, she got straight to the point the way she always does when she's already decided something and just needs to inform me of it. "Your sister is bringing Dawson home for Christmas," she said. "The whole family is coming. We're doing it properly this time." I was sitting at my kitchen table with a stack of ungraded papers in front of me. I taught third grade at a public school 20 minutes from my apartment. I had 47 spelling tests to get through before Thursday. "That sounds nice," I said. "We want it to be a good impression." She paused. "His family has money, sweetheart. Real money. And you know how your sister gets nervous." I did know. My sister Britt had been getting nervous around me since we were teenagers. Nervous that I would say the wrong thing, wear the wrong thing, be the wrong thing. She was 31 now and apparently nothing had changed. "What are you asking me, Mom?" Another pause, longer this time. "We just thought it might be easier if you sat this one out. Just Christmas Eve dinner, you can come Christmas morning for gifts. It would only be the one evening." I heard myself say, "Okay." Just like that. One word, no argument, no tears. I think I surprised both of us. "You're not upset?" "I'm fine," I said. "I'll let you go." I put the phone down and stared at the spelling tests. 47 kids who had written the word because 14 different ways between them. I graded all of them before I let myself feel anything. Here's what you need to understand about my family. I was never the daughter they planned for. Britt was the plan. Britt was golden-haired and charming and had known since age 9 that she wanted to work in fashion. She did. She moved to New York at 22, built a career styling for editorial shoots, and eventually landed a position at a firm that represented luxury brands. She was good at it, genuinely good. I was proud of her even when she made it difficult to be. I was the one who took a different exit. I went to college on a partial scholarship, added loans for the rest, got a degree in education, and spent 4 years in a master's program because I believed, and still believe, that if you're going to spend your life teaching children to read, you should understand how children learn. I came out the other side with letters after my name and a salary that made my father visibly uncomfortable whenever it came up. "You could have done anything," he told me once. Not cruelly, just honestly, which was almost worse. He meant, you were smart enough, you could have made real money. Why did you choose this? I chose it because I wanted to. Because the first time I watched a kid crack open a chapter book on their own, really read it, really understand it, something happened in my chest that I've never been able to describe properly. I've stopped trying to explain it to my family. They nod politely and change the subject. Dawson, it turned out, was the son of a man who had built a regional logistics company from a single truck and sold it for a number that newspapers described as 8 figures. Dawson himself worked in private equity. He was 35, tall, and according to my mother, very well spoken. I learned all of this not from my family, but from my grandmother. My grandmother, Elsa, was my mother's mother, and she was the only person in my family who called me just to talk, not to update me on Britt, not to relay a message from my parents, not to gently suggest I consider a career change. She called to tell me about the book she was reading, to ask what my students had done that week that made me laugh, to argue companionably about whether a particular film was worth watching. She died 14 months before that Christmas. I had been with her at the end. I'd taken a leave from school and spent 3 weeks sleeping on a cot in her spare bedroom, making soup she barely ate, reading aloud from the mystery novels she loved. My parents came on weekends. Britt came once, for 2 days, and cried so much that my grandmother spent her limited energy comforting her. When Grandma Elsa died, I went home and went back to work. There was a will, I knew. There was an attorney, a man named Mr. Calloway, who had handled her affairs for decades. I had been told, vaguely, that the estate would take some time to settle. I didn't ask questions. I didn't think much about it. Grandma Elsa had a house, some savings, the antique writing desk I'd always loved. I assumed things would be divided neatly and that would be the end of it. It was not the end of it. 3 months after she died, Mr. Calloway called me. Not my parents. Me. He asked if we could meet in person. I drove to his office on a gray Wednesday afternoon, still in my work clothes, a little confused. He was a compact man in his 70s with reading glasses he kept setting down and picking back up. He offered me water. I took it. Your grandmother was very specific in her final instructions, he said. Okay. She updated her documents approximately 8 months before she passed. I want to be clear that she was of full capacity when she did so. I examined the matter carefully. I believe you, I said. What did she do? He set his glasses down. She restructured her estate into a trust. The principal value, including the house after sale, her investment accounts, and her remaining assets, comes to approximately $4.3 million. I nodded slowly. I had not known the number was that large. She designated you as the sole trustee, he said. You will manage and distribute the trust assets. You will have full discretionary authority over timing and amounts. For myself? He looked at me carefully. The primary beneficiary is your sister. The trust is structured to provide for her long-term financial needs as you see fit, over whatever timeline you determine appropriate. I sat with that for a moment. So I manage $4 million that belongs to my sister. That is accurate. You are empowered to distribute funds for her housing, health, education, and general welfare. You have broad authority to interpret those categories. You also receive a trustee fee, standard, percentage-based, for your service. And your grandmother left you a direct bequest outside the trust, $50,000, and the writing desk. I looked at my water glass. Why didn't she split it? Mr. Calloway picked his glasses back up. She left a letter. I can give it to you now if you'd like. The letter was 3 pages in my grandmother's handwriting, which had gotten smaller and more careful in her last years. I'm not going to reproduce all of it here. Some of it was private. Some of it was just her voice, the way she had of saying difficult things plainly without making them feel cruel. But the part that matters was this: she had watched, for years, how my sister handled money. Not badly, not recklessly, but thoughtlessly. Brit spent what she had and borrowed against what she expected to have. She was not malicious about it. She simply had never needed to develop a different relationship with money, because there had always been more. My grandmother had bailed her out twice, quietly, in amounts my parents didn't know about. I love Brit completely, she wrote. And because I love her, I do not want to hand her something she will burn through in 5 years and mourn for 50. I trust you to give it to her wisely, the way I would. I trust you to love her well enough to sometimes say no. That is a harder job than receiving the money outright. I know that. I'm asking you to do it anyway. She also wrote, I know your family doesn't always see you clearly. I see you. I always have. I folded the letter. I drove home. I did not tell anyone. I kept the secret for 14 months. Partly because the estate was still being settled. These things take time, paperwork, patience. Partly because I genuinely didn't know how to have the conversation, but mostly, I think, because I needed to understand it myself first. I needed to sit with what my grandmother had trusted me with before I handed it over to people who had spent years making me feel small. So when my mother called and asked me not to come to Christmas Eve dinner, I said okay. I helped myself to a quiet apartment, leftover pasta, and a glass of wine. I watched a movie I'd been meaning to watch for months. I went to sleep early. I was fine. What I did not anticipate was my sister calling me at 9:30 Christmas morning, before the gift exchange, before I was even supposed to arrive. She was crying, not the decorative crying she did at Grandma Elsa's bedside. This was something rawer, less managed. He proposed, she said. Oh, I said, congratulations. I told him yes. She sniffled. We told Mom and Dad over breakfast, and then Dawson asked about the family. He was asking questions. He likes to know about people. And it came up that Grandma had passed, and I mentioned the estate, and I told him I expected to receive my inheritance soon, and she stopped. And, he had questions about the timeline, and I realized I actually didn't know. I've never followed up with the attorney. Mom said it takes time, and I just assumed. She stopped again. Do you know anything? You were closer to her. Did she tell you anything before she died? I set my coffee cup down very carefully. Why don't you come over, I said. Bring Mom and Dad, we should probably talk. They arrived at my apartment 45 minutes later. My mother was in her Christmas sweater. My father looked tired. Britt still had on her pajamas under a coat, which told me how quickly they'd left. Dawson wasn't with them, which was probably for the best. I had made more coffee. I set out 4 mugs. I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd graded spelling tests on the Tuesday my mother called, and I told them the truth. I told them about the trust, the 4.3 million, the letter, my grandmother's reasoning, the 14 months. My mother's face went through several stages. Surprise, then something that might have been hurt, then a complicated expression I couldn't quite name. My father sat very still. Britt stared at me. She made you the trustee. Yes. You've been managing it for over a year. The estate settled about 8 months ago. I've been trustee for 8 months, yes. And you didn't tell us. I looked at her steadily. Grandma Elsa asked me to manage it thoughtfully. I was trying to figure out how to do that. Does that mean you've been deciding whether I get my own inheritance? The trust is for your benefit, I said. I distribute funds for your housing, health, education, and general welfare. I have discretion on timing and amounts. Those were her instructions. But the money is mine. It's held in trust for you. That's different. Britt looked at our mother, then back at me. I expected anger. I was braced for it, actually. Some part of me had been braced for it for 14 months. But what she said was, did she explain why? I paused. Yes. Will you tell me? I could have summarized it. I could have softened it, translated it, protected Britt from the harder edges. That would have been the easier thing. It also would have been exactly the kind of thing my grandmother was asking me not to do. She said she loves you completely, I said. And because she loves you, she didn't want to hand you something she was afraid you'd go through too fast. She said she trusted me to give it to you wisely, the way she would have. Silence. My father spoke for the first time since they'd sat down. She left you to manage it, after everything. It wasn't an accusation exactly. More like he was working something out. After everything, I agreed. More silence. My mother wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. It was Britt who finally said, quietly, she was right about the money. She wasn't looking at me when she said it. She was looking at the table. I had some credit issues a few years ago. Nothing major. But she knew about it. She helped me once. I asked her not to tell anyone. She didn't, I said. Britt looked up. She really trusted you with this. She did. Do you... She stopped. Started again. Are you going to be fair about it? Yes, I said. She didn't leave it with me because she wanted me to punish you. She left it with me because she thought I'd take care of you the right way. I'm going to try to do that. My mother made a sound that wasn't quite a word. She pressed her fingers to her mouth and looked at the ceiling. I'm sorry, she said. About Tuesday. About the dinner. Christmas Eve, I said. Yes, she stopped. Your sister asked and I thought it was easier to just. She stopped again. It wasn't right. I know that. I know you know. My father reached across the table and put his hand over mine for a moment. He didn't say anything. He's not a man who says things easily. But he left his hand there for a few seconds, and for him, that was a lot. I poured everyone more coffee. Here's what I want you to understand about what happened after that. It was not a perfect resolution. There was no moment where everything clicked into place and my family suddenly saw me differently and treated me accordingly forever and ever. That's not how families work, and it's not what I want to tell you happened, because it didn't. What happened was messier and more real than that. Britt and Dawson got married 11 months later. I was in the wedding, which she asked me to be, and I said yes without hesitation, because she is my sister and I love her even when she makes me want to walk directly into the sea. She cried during the vows. Dawson turned out to be a decent person, quieter than I expected, genuinely kind to my parents, the type who learns your coffee order without being asked. My mother sent me a for $47. I don't think we will. Some things get addressed sideways in families, through behavior rather than words. She sends me texts now sometimes. Not about Brit. Just a recipe she thought I'd like, a news article about a new reading program in public schools, a picture of the first snow. It's something. My father came to see my classroom in March. He drove 40 minutes on a weekday to be there for a presentation my students did about animals they'd researched. 22 8-year-olds stood up in front of cardboard trifold displays and read aloud about sea turtles and Arctic foxes and the axolotl, which 3 kids had independently chosen and were each very confident they had discovered first. My father sat in one of the small plastic chairs and watched the whole thing. Afterward, in the parking lot, he said, "They really trust you in there." "They're 8, I said. "Still," he said. I thought about Grandma Elsa the whole drive home. I thought about the letter, about the line, "I know your family doesn't always see you clearly. I see you, I always have." She see Blay, and maybe, slowly, the rest of them were starting to. I still have the writing desk. It sits in the corner of my living room, which is a small living room in a not very glamorous apartment, and it's the most beautiful thing I own. Sometimes I sit at it to write lesson plans, which is probably not what it was made for, and I think about my grandmother at her own desk, deciding what to do with what she had left. She could have given Brit the money outright. She could have split it down the middle. She chose something harder and stranger and more complicated, because she knew her granddaughters, both of us, better than we probably deserved. I'm still figuring out how to do the job she gave me. I suspect I will be figuring it out for a long time, but I get up every morning, I go to school, I watch 22 kids puzzle their way through a world full of hard things, and I think, this is enough. This has always been enough. My grandmother knew that before I did. I've thought a lot about why my grandmother made the choice she did, not the legal mechanics of it. I understand those now. But the deeper reason. Why she looked at her 2 granddaughters and decided that the one her family overlooked was the one she could trust with everything. I think it comes down to something simple that took me a long time to see clearly. The way you live when no one is watching is the only version of yourself that's actually real. For years I showed up, to her bedside, to my classroom, to the hard and unglamorous work of caring about things that don't pay well, or photograph well, or impress anyone at a dinner party. I wasn't doing it to be seen. I was doing it because it was right. Because it mattered. Because Grandma Elsa mattered, and my students matter, and some things are worth your whole effort, even when the world isn't keeping score. That's what she saw. Not my salary or my apartment, or whether I could hold my own at a table full of people in expensive clothes. She saw that I had built a kind of internal compass that didn't depend on anyone else's approval to keep pointing north. She trusted that compass more than she trusted a number in a bank account. And here's the thing about carrying a secret like that for 14 months. It changes you in ways you don't expect. I wasn't angry during that time. I was quiet. I was watching. I was learning, maybe for the first time, that I didn't need my family to validate what my grandmother had already confirmed, that I was capable, that I was trustworthy, that I was enough. When they sat in my kitchen on Christmas morning and the truth came out, I didn't feel victorious. I want to be honest about that. There was no part of me that wanted to watch my mother's face fall or see my sister cry. What I felt was something closer to grief. For all the years we'd spent in that family dynamic, for all the dinners and holidays and conversations, shaped by a hierarchy that was never really about who we were. Britt said something that morning that I keep coming back to. She said Grandma was right about the money, just like that, quietly, without drama. It took real honesty to say it, real self-awareness. And in that moment, I understood that my sister isn't a villain in this story. She's just someone who never had to develop certain muscles because the weight was always lifted for her. That's not cruelty. That's just what happens when love skips the hard parts. What Grandma Elsa gave me wasn't really $4 million to manage. It was a test of whether I could hold power without becoming someone different. Whether I could be trusted with something heavy and still walk straight. I'm still taking that test every day. I don't always get it right. But I keep the writing desk in the corner of my living room. I sit at it sometimes and think about her handwriting getting smaller and more careful. Her voice steady even at the end, the way she always asked about my students by name. She knew that the work you do with your hands and your heart and your full attention is the most honest account of who you are. She built her trust on that accounting. I'm trying to be worth it.